there. So, Maui, let's just start at the most basic initial place of all. Now, to everyone else, is a one-sentence answer, but spoiler, you know me, just go watch that Leeds versus Twists thing. It's always more complicated when it comes to me, like many things in life. So you have to understand, if you talk about like the GOAT, there's more than just a name. So, but who is your GOAT? Who is your GOAT of basketball?
It is sacrilegious to approach the NBA space and not say that the GOAT is Michael Jordan if you have most common sensibilities, but I think that there can be cases depending on what you value for a couple other people. I would say that if you really want to go with individual peak, you might choose someone like Wilt. If you want to go for the most winningest player, you would go for someone like Russell. But I'm going to stick with the tried and tested Michael Jordan, not even just because other people see him as that, but I kind of value a couple things. And I think that when we had our discussion about Elige versus Twist, I started to reevaluate my criteria for what makes someone the greatest of all time. And I would say that when you brought to the discussion there that peak was more important than longevity, I'd say why not both? Because Michael had multiple peaks. He was incredibly talented for many of the years during his championship run. Like, there were so many various accomplishments that he was able to find during that time that you could look at probably at least 3 different years where he was just at the absolute apex of his powers. And in those seasons, there was no one truly in the modern NBA that has come close to that. I was looking at some of his playoff numbers, and the way that he was averaging just like above 30 for so many different playoff runs was just so ridiculous when you compare that to even modern players in a league where we're currently seeing just such high usage rate out of the All-Stars. And for Michael to be doing that 30 years ago is where it is, he's just otherworldly and he is transcendent. I would say that also something that I latch onto because, simply put, I can't necessarily go back in time, view him as a contemporaneous viewer, and try to see, like, I mean, I wasn't there. You know, I wasn't there when it was happening because I was in single-digit ages when he was taking over the world as a cultural phenom. So, but just kind of the remnants of that and where Michael has left so much impact in the space is another thing where you look at some of the other stars, even like, let's say, you know, LeBron, who many people would want to compare to him, and LeBron just doesn't have even that same sort of recognition where it feels like Michael Jordan was a top 5 celebrity on the planet when he was playing that well. Whereas today, I think you would probably consider a handful of music stars above LeBron. You would probably consider a couple actors above LeBron, actresses for that matter too. And that to me, all encompassing is why Jordan is the GOAT. And yes, I'm using external factors to beyond just even play at that point. But I would say that his play also suffices. It's just that there is this additional supplementary work, these extracurriculars that Jordan did on top of it, that to me make him the all-timer.
So I'll do it my usual way. Spoiler, I am at the end going to say Michael Jordan's the GOAT. Like, because what it's a bit like the thing about Simple being the GOAT in CSGO. Oh, don't worry, yeah, loads of fans are morons when they say it, because they're just going off something else. Like, but the HLTB, right? Oh, like, but look at he won the major. Like, you know what? Like, those are like the side reasons, or like things that are like circumstantial evidence. But the point is, with Simple, it's like I always say, it's like, mate, take the nameplates off, just go watch them play. Like, I think any expert will watch Simple play CSGO and go, even if I don't like him, I have to say he's the best. Look how fucking cracked out this is. It's the same with Michael Jordan. If you watch, it's just impossible to be that dominant. And if people don't know, a key context to his career is this was never a thing, nobody was ever the hard carry player winning championships from the shooting guard position alone. Like, if you did that, you could be the best. Like, Jerry West was an amazing shooting guard, but he had, like, amazing, like, small forward, center when he had Wilt. Like, he had some amazing other pieces. Like, not only did this guy hard carry, he hard carried from a position where, think of the name, shooting guard. Like, the problem with shooting is, if you're not actually the absolute best ever, Steph Curry even has this problem. If you just miss shots, the game's over. Like, you don't have an extra way to score. I even think, by the way, that's the thing, LeBron, the way he went out of this playoffs is a summary of why I've never seen him as a true GOAT. It's like, mate, he just just tried to force his way to the basket, hoping he'd get a bailout call. He didn't have any mid-range game. He couldn't stop when the defender's there and pull back and do a two-point shot. That's just not his way. So to me, when I make the list, I'm good at the end going Michael Jordan, but I'll lay it out. I think, like I say with everything, you've always got to lay the people who can be initially in the convo, and then you eliminate them. Some of them you eliminate quickly, some of them take you longer. So if I put my list, I would put essentially pretty much a list like yours. I would have Jordan, Kobe, Larry Bird, Kareem, Wilt, and then I would probably just put LeBron on because I agree, if you look at raw stats and longevity, he initially gets in. Personally, I don't put Magic for reasons I'll get to in a minute. Spoiler, he played with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but there's that. So when I go to, and also, this is going to be a bias, man, you'll notice from the names I've put. One thing I do actually think, you know how in CSGO, it's actually a controversial take, but no one ever picks up on this one. They just sort of let it go by. You know, I always say for me, the king stat is kills per round. You can't fake the funk on that one. It's why I even know Blame F has to be better than people say. Because at the end of the day, you can't bait and even get that many kills. It doesn't exist in the game. You have to actually, even if you think he mega baits, he also must be really fucking good at killing people. So when you see people with the 0.8 KPR and they're not playing at tier 2 or nobodies, they are fucking unbelievable. They are that player alone, you can disagree with every aspect of their game, but the most fundamental thing in Counter-Strike is shooting people and killing them. And in basketball, the most fundamental thing is scoring baskets. So if you notice, one thing I have that makes me very different is the reason why, for example, Magic didn't get there is because Magic's biggest strength isn't the scoring. He's actually an underrated scorer, but his biggest strength is make the team better, make people... Notice what's implied within that. If you have a bad team, you cannot win if you have Magic Johnson. If you have a bad team and you have a Michael Jordan or a Kobe you could. It's not impossible. They could actually do what someone like Simple does and hard carry you to the win. You can't hard carry if you're actually just the best point guard, basically. It's also why, low key, I actually think LeBron's overrated. Because they try to say that he's Magic Johnson and he's just passing and making everyone better. But then every fan of his tells me all of his teammates are worse than they used to be when they recruited them and that they're not giving him any help. It's well, bro... Who's making who on this? You know what I mean, bro? It's the other way around with all the great point guards. Every other great point guard, that's the knock on their star even. It's they had this guy feeding them all the time. So in reality, if you actually look at LeBron, he's trying to be a star and a scorer. He just moves between it depending on his comfort level. And there's a reason why he scored all those points. And there's a reason why, spoiler, he doesn't average a triple-double every season. He's more like the 7-8 assists guy. So to me, he's in between the two. And essentially, this will come back to something you pointed out, but it's one of my key aspects. You can't actually be the GOAT if someone said to me, you can pick any time in their career and it would go in one game or one series, who are you picking? If you're not saying the same person that you say overall is the GOAT, then he's not the GOAT. Because essentially, if they could all exist in the same time period, the same understanding of the meta, and that guy wouldn't actually win, then how's he the GOAT? You know what I mean? Because essentially, longevity can trick you like that. You can get a player people, this is why I don't have Device as my GOAT. Because the only time I ever thought he was the best in the world was maybe for a while at the end of 2016, early 2017. Aside from that, I always had Cold Zera or fucking Simple or Ziwu. I always had someone else as the GOAT. So essentially, unless I picked that one very short period of his career, it was mainly because other people were on a downturn or had the wrong team, he wouldn't win me the game. So logically, it has to be someone like Simple, no matter what condition they're in. So it's the same thing with these players. Just being top 5 for 10 years doesn't cut it for me. Essentially, if people are LeBron fans, already stop the cap. His prime ended ages ago. So if I go back in time, I'm probably taking 2013 LeBron. I think that was the most cracked out one on the Heat. It was really fucking good. Even had a post-up game then. He was even defending people then. He was even playing all the games then. That is a really good player. The problem is, it still wouldn't beat all the names on my list. So I'm taking LeBron off very quickly. Then for Wilt, I actually do think if you just only look at level of play, he's fucking unbelievable. But if people don't know, because Wilt was in such a nation NBA, he actually himself limited his game. And you won't believe this, but he was the original star reading Reddit comments. What happened was when people said stuff to him you just score too much. By the way, this is where I'll never be affected by comments, right? If someone says something you're just only doing your strength, it's yeah, try and stop me, motherfucker. Watch me keep doing it. No, so instead he had that season where he just averaged the most assists. In a movie, that's awesome, Maui. But in reality, it's you only did that because they told he couldn't do it. And then later in his career, when he joined the Lakers with all these big names, Jerry West, they were oh, well, you just joined a team with all these star players. I bet your ego's too big. So then he stopped even scoring, bro. Then he was just I'll just be defender and block. It's mate, Everyone got in your head. If you actually go back in time, I actually want you to be simple, bro. I would go back in time and I'd tell young Wilt Chamberlain, don't let any of these motherfuckers tell you anything. Score every basket you can. And if he'd have done that, by the way, and played as long as he could, I actually think he would be the GOAT. He was the simple of basketball, if people don't know. Nobody could match his numbers. And it wasn't even just to do with pace, by the way. Here's something people don't know. That season when he averaged 50, it's not like the other people were averaging 40, bro. They were all averaging like 30 and 26 and stuff like that. He just basically was the most like fucking guaranteed basket of all time, essentially. And because he had insane stamina, there's why no one else can do that. People don't know about this, Maui. The reason why people like Kobe, who were just built like a normal NBA player, have to be in the gym all day is because, mate, your arms get tired if you shoot 30 shots. You can't do that. Like a normal... When we look at like modern stars and they do like, fucking 18 shots a game, that's because that's like what even an athlete can stand. It's really hard to play defense, run up and down, and fucking shoot all those shots. So to me, Wilt has to be on there for like play. But like I say, he sort of, because he couldn't know what was going to come later, there's another thing. Everyone else shadow boxed against him. At the time, if people don't know, he was the leading scorer, I think, when he retired. At the time, he thought, well, that's cool. I got my championship at the end. I switched up so they couldn't criticize me. And I'm the GOAT. I've got the most points. Problem solved. He couldn't know years later the rules get easier, 3-point shot, people see his record and go for it. So we'll take him out. We're down to 4 names now. Kareem, I actually do think is another one where if you just look at individual level of play, this guy's fucking bonkers. I do think that they overrate slightly. Here's what's hard about their championship side. He actually could have won loads of championships in the 70s when some of his teams were dodgy and he was like the MVP every bloody season. But then the ones he had later was when he did have the amazing team with Magic and all the Lakers. Like that was like an all-star team if people don't know. It was fucking unbelievable. So the championship part's a bit overrated, but he could have won more earlier. He is an insane player. Like I'll give you a random piece that actually came from some fiction. If you saw that show Winning Time where they made that like TV series semi-fictional about the Lakers from the 80s, and it's the one of the 1980 season when Magic joins, they have a segment that was so genius where they have Kareem just explain what it's like to be him, like the tallest player with an amazing skill set and do that skyhook, which if people don't know, like it's amazing that like on occasion someone like Wilt Chamberlain could block that. Everyone else couldn't block it because his wingspan's so big. You're on his left. He goes like this with his right and throws it over his head. It goes in a massive, like really good arc, which also is an underrated thing about basketball. And it just goes in the net at like 60%. If people don't understand, essentially, it's unguardable. He just could choose how much to score based on how good he was that game. And what they do is they have this bit where he explains to Magic Johnson what it's like to be him. And it's like about how when he jumps and they all jump, the other player jumps with him. It's like he sort of like, it's like he like leaves the earth and then they're just down here and he's just looking down at the basket. He's not even looking like shooting. He's looking down and he's just sort of like, and then I'm just putting the ball in or whatever. And you're like, fuck, when you think of it that way, like, mate, yeah, like essentially you were just running the game, like you're just playing your own game, almost a one versus 0 game, and everyone else on the court plays like a 5v4 game against the others, and essentially it's just how you're feeling. If you're feeling it, you score and you win. That's why if people don't know, he was a finals MVP at like 36 years old or something in an era without sports like tech and all that. And so yeah, there's another player I could easily see be the GOAT. The problem is this, with players like that, this is another interesting thing about basketball. There's a degree to which, like, depending on the era of basketball, you can't always get your shot. People have to pass you the ball. They have to get you the entry pass. The thing about the reason why the smaller players, like even someone I didn't put on this, the reason why someone like Kevin Durant's OP is you actually can't stop him doing what he wants to do. He can always like go around you, dribble, take a shot, do it contested. Like in a way, if you're picking one player, that's why Michael Jordan is OP as fuck. Michael Jordan's the only player you could put against any team, and I actually think he could, I won't say win because your team wins you the game, but he could always get his. No one ever actually shut him down the way people think. Like actually, that's why if you shut him down a little bit, we're like, fuck, you must be a goated defender. That's how it worked. So I'll take Kareem out because I just don't think overall I would take it. So then I've got Jordan, Kobe, and Bird. Right, it's pretty simple on this one. I can go quicker here. Larry Bird's hella underrated if people don't know. Because actually, here's where people get it wrong. They're like, oh, he had the game like Magic. It's not, no, he had like the passing game like Magic. He was a killer shooter. And by the way, I actually think he's the most clutch player ever. I've just seen too much, mate. Like, he's the guy who always get you a 2-point or 3-point basket if you need to win the game. And he's so insane. Those stories aren't a joke. And here's the little angle I'll give people. Because look, this is a big rank, but it's obviously the start of the show and you're getting the download right now. The reason why Larry Bird has a million stories, you'll have heard them, that all go like this. Yeah, then Bird just told me, like, before the ball came in, like, hey, motherfucker, I'm going to go to this spot. I'm going to, like, pivot backwards. I'm going to hit a 2-point in your face. You can't do anything about it. You're going to think, like, That's like a movie again, Thorin. Like in real life, that'd be bad. No, because I can tell you what I actually learned about people like Michael Jordan, Kobe, but half the time, these other guys do know, don't antagonize them. Don't fuck. It's like me on Twitter, don't fuck with me, because then you'll piss me off and I'll go look at it. So because people then even stop doing that, you just generate it yourself. You come up with some fucked up reason, like, you know what, this will make it like more challenging. I'll tell him where I'm going to go and do it. And then when you do it, it's like, right, yes, fuck. That's how you make even a regular season game. Like, you're going to be motivated to hit the shot when you've won X championships and all the MVPs. These guys actually psychologically are just on another level. They're not just playing basketball. They're playing like the fucking team. So Larry Bird was insane. His problem is obvious. Injuries mean he essentially had like an 8 or 9 year prime. Now, he was fucking sick. Again, if I'm taking the one player, he might be one of mine that I might pick. So we're down to 2. Already, people are going to be rolling their eyes. How dare you have Kobe in that? How dare he even make the last 2? But I've got a couple of angles for you. Because if you know one thing I'm amazing at, and I won't lie, I started to come up with these angles. You probably see it with Alexi B, mate. I'm like a fucking old master when I paint an Alexi B storyline. Y'all all think it's just simple, isn't it? It's like simple colours. No, there's the shading and the nuance, and you have to understand the school of impressionism I was coming from and the romantic ideal. Because what I learned to do is you've got to come up with like fucking counter arguments. You've got to come up with counterintuitive arguments. You've got to do devil's advocate, because obviously I can't show you the results for him, can I? I can't show you all the trophies, Maui. So instead I have to explain to you that the reason Alexi's good is because actually he never had a star AWP. In fact, who were even his star players in his career? And what other pieces did he have and how many of them experienced? So I do a similar thing to Kobe. I don't do the whole he had 5 championships, right? The big thing with Kobe is this. I'm not exaggerating. I actually think he was the most skilled basketball player ever at the end of his career, because the key thing is he had a lot of talent and then he developed it beyond, as far as I can tell, almost anyone. And even though people do that thing of like, but he was just doing what Michael Jordan did, then you don't know Michael Jordan's career. Because Michael Jordan himself, by the way, took loads of those moves from players in the 60s and the 70s. And then, spoiler, if you've actually watched Kobe Bryant in like the 24 era of his career, dude, he had loads of moves that weren't Michael Jordan moves. Like, he took moves from Hakeem Olajuwon when he worked with him. Yeah. He took like post-up moves. He took like defensive moves from Gary Payton and play that. Essentially, him and Michael Jordan, the real secret isn't that one invent the moves. They were sponges. They just do whatever works. Whatever they can do with their body that works, they bring that into the game. And then there's a couple of angles on the Kobe one that people won't appreciate. One is when Kobe was like the dominant player and the star of the Lakers in the latter part of his career, that's when zone defense exists. Now, if you don't understand, guys, even though like defensive rules are worse for the defender, so you can absolutely get free fouls and free throws all day long. The worst thing about zone, you can go back and look. When they brought zone in, by the way, almost everyone complained. And the reason why was, it just, in theory, is the counter to star players. Because if you can put 3 people around a star player, he can still shoot it, but he might even be a dickhead if he does it there. Like, he might be like actually taking a bad shot. If you can't, the old rules when Michael Jordan played it's called illegal defense. You can only have one player play him. And a guy can sort of cheat off, but he can't do it much. And he can't come and just stand next to him. You can't just have 3 people like that around them. It doesn't exist. So the thing is, it's not that I actually think it's like, scoring was harder overall later, but zone defense just means that like you actually can't do what Michael Jordan did if you were Kobe Bryant. It doesn't exist in that era. After you were about something like 23, that just didn't exist. There was no hand checking. There was no fucking illegal defense. And then here's an angle that no one knows. No one thinks of this. Because I always used to wonder, there's a famous thing Kobe said to Michael Jordan. He said that, like, I used to argue with him and we would argue about who was better. And by the way, Michael Jordan didn't just tell him, like, well, obviously, mate, shut the fuck up. They would have an argument, right? But listen to the years they picked. Jordan would pick 92, because that was he still had his physical prime and he's obviously won at this time. Kobe would pick 2003, the year you had that 40-point game streak. And I was thinking, what? Dude, pick like 2008 or 2009, like, you know, when you won the championship or you were at your prime, the MVP. But I know why he picked 2003. Because after that, he had some injuries, right? So that was his physical peak. And here's the detail about 2003. People don't know. That's fucking insane when you know this. When you know this, it's mental. That was the year where the reason Kobe had this 40-point streak of 9 games in a row where he had 40 points is because Shaq came into the season with an injured toe and didn't get it fixed because he was just being an arsehole. And so he had to miss a load of these games. And so when they missed the game, it was like the green light for Kobe. He was like, you just shoot every time. This detail is insane. It sounds mega already to score nine games in a row, 40. And by the way, he did it on like good shooting percentage, like 50+%, maybe even 60% at times. The insane detail is this. That era of basketball is the lowest scoring period in the history of the NBA. The average amount of points scored per game, are you ready, is like low 90s. Think about that for a second, guys. Low 90s for your team, and he scores 40 points every game he wants to with like a very good percentage for a shooting guard. That is actually like mad underrated, mate. That's insane. So the problem Kobe has, I'm going to eliminate him now, is this. A lot of these are hypotheticals, or I'm taking an angle, like this angle's cool, or I wouldn't. The problem he has is, one, when he played with Shaq, actually they were like a 1A, 1B at certain years of their careers. But that's irrelevant. Like there wasn't a 1A, 1B. Scottie Pippen was not 1B. He was 2. Right. He was 2 very clearly. And then also, like you're saying about the playoff scoring, Michael Jordan averaged 33 points over all 6 finals he played. He had to, no matter what, ball the fuck out, or you don't win those championships. So it's not that I don't, like, essentially I'm saying I think Kobe in some ways was as good or better, but if you go by all the factors, it's why at the end it's Michael Jordan, by the way, because he's just the only one that has everything. He's the only one that has every aspect. I'd take him at his peak. I would take him, he's got enough longevity, like you say. He's got the fucking rings. He's got all the awards. He does play defense. There's nothing people ignore. He actually plays both sides of the floor. LeBron fucking has like 10 years off defense now, guys. I've been watching this motherfucker, just watch them go. Dude, the thing that killed me inside was that shit argument that, like, you know, when the Warriors were just stacked and then everyone's like, Durant isn't actually better. Like, the Warriors are just better. Like, then why doesn't LeBron guard Durant? You do know technically they play the same position, motherfuckers. If he's, by the way, the guy from 2013 might have been able to. One, no one could guard Durant because he's 7 feet and has point guard skills. He said that himself. He's right. No one could guard him. So I think LeBron, I'm just going to say this right now, I think he didn't want to look silly. I think he didn't want to see those shots be hit in his face and then lose the game. So to me, at the end, it is Michael Jordan. Now, luckily, because I'm Thorin, it was a circuitous route. But you know what? You enjoyed the journey. I was showing you the sights and the sounds. I was telling you a little bit of intro. And this animal over here, of course, the Wilt Chamberlainicus, you know. And it was all great, wasn't it? So there you go. Do you have any... I'm sure it's giving you some angles to come off. Yeah, go on.
Well, just some other fun facts about the Kobe stuff is that I think that the way that it's been described before with Kobe versus Michael Jordan is that Kobe's kind of the remix of MJ, because MJ used to have this phrase that every single offseason he's going to add one more move to his repertoire. But what Kobe was doing was just beyond that. Like I think when Kobe found out that Shane Battier was looking at some of his footage to try to defend him for the upcoming season, Kobe got a very similar video guy to Shane Battier's video guy and then said, break down my moves so that I know how to change up my own moves so that I could be ahead of him when we actually play in the upcoming season.
That's genius. So, that's some anime level shit. That's what's sick about it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. When he goes back into, you know, every offseason, he was trying to chase Jordan's ghost, and that's what put the chip on his shoulder the entire time. And so I think it's actually incredibly fair to say that he was the most skilled player of all time, because I think when you actually do take into account footwork and when you take into account just entire repertoire, his arsenal and how deep it was, his bag as the kids say. Like,
dude,
then,
if you ever watch a highlight when he scores 50 points, this is the thing I need you to do if you're a casual fan. Watch someone like James Harden and he'll do 3 moves and he'll score all his points. Yeah. Kobe has had games where he scores 50, where I'm not joking, he's doing a different shot from a different point on the floor each time. It's almost like he was trying to do it like intentionally, like, you know, it's impossible.
That's why when you bring up eye test, it's so valuable, because when you actually look back at a lot of Jordan games and like some of the highlights just feel so repetitive after a while. You're like, okay, it's the same move again, same move again, same kind of pull up, same pull up. Yeah. And it's great. I mean, it's like, it's consistent, and it's also probably in terms of efficiency, he was better than Kobe, but it's also, it's just that sometimes you just kind of see with Kobe and his evolution of what Jordan did that he just had more to offer. If Kobe were placed in Jordan's era, there's a debate there if he would have been as successful. But I mean, for my money and for honestly, in terms of what he was bringing to the table, he just built off of everything Jordan did.
I'll also give you another detail. The reason why those two specifically, when you compare, this is also why overall Jordan has to be my GOAT, is because there's 2 aspects Michael Jordan has that people don't get this. Kobe Bryant's actual size and raw athleticism isn't as crazy as you think. There've been loads. I think there's even players in his era. Like, by the way, people like LeBron, way more athletic. Someone like Carmelo Anthony's just way bigger. Kevin Durant has the size and the long arms. Like, these guys have all these physical advantages. So actually, like, Kobe had to max skill out. That was the one area. Essentially, work ethic and skill is the one thing he could max out. There's 2 things about Michael Jordan. One, this is not an exaggeration. And remember, he's a fucking shooting guard. He has the highest vertical in the history of the NBA. The vertical jump upwards, his goal's like, 47 inches or something, right? That's OP already. And he already did build out the rest of his game. And then the second one is, it's not a joke. Michael Jordan has enormous hands. And that's why there's all those highlights where instead of like, holding the ball here and moving it around between your legs, Jordan doesn't do that. He holds it like this. And there are real highlights where he like goes like this. The defender runs out. And because he's holding it like this, he doesn't have his hand around it like that. He's holding it. He just pulls it back and then does a shot. No one else can even do that. Like, essentially, he had like the hands of a centre and
like
the jump of the greatest players ever. And then he also is a shooting guard with all the fucking bag, and he worked on the mid-range game and he plays defence. Like, what more do you want him to do? Coach as well and make the hot dogs too? Like, give me a fucking break. Like, here's the funny thing. I can go against Jordan on certain things. Like, this is why you don't do rings, by the way. Because if you do rings, I'll start bringing up, well, you had Phil Jackson, and there's certain things about the area of the NBA. I mean, he won one of his championships on an expansion. There's things he can do there. That's why body of work really is the best. You don't, because no one can argue against it. Like, they can't watch a highlight like you're talking about, where he just blows past people whenever he wants, does the fadeaway every time he wants. He's always hitting 50% on the fadeaways, and then at the end of it, they can't go, he isn't doing that. So he is, like, what argument do you have now? Like, the eye test is the king. It just is the king, boys.
When you even talk about people with similar physical attributes, I think the number one comparison to Kobe in his era is Vince Carter, because it's just basically like they were the same height, they were practically the same weight, and Vince Carter was clearly more gifted athletically, which is why he was such a dunk contest hero. But he wasn't, I mean, in terms of finesse and skill, there's no comparison at all. You don't even really open up that conversation.
No, I'm with you. That's why, to me, like I say, it's my motto, but you can see why it's not just something I say. People think I just do this, Maui, like I say, for Corp. They think I just do it because it's like, well, Carlos Carrigan hasn't won the 4 majors. You've got to have like a bullshit angle. No, they actually, I always say this. It's like that famous like Aristotle quote, like, wise men argue cases, fools decide them. The actual like concept of the conversation is the interesting part. The name you say at the end means nothing. Like, for example, say you agree Michael Jordan's the GOAT, and say I did pick like Larry Bird. Say we're not going off like whole career, we're going off 1 year, and I just decide Larry Bird would win, right? If we do that, if another person joins the convo, and then you go, well, who do you think's the GOAT? And we just did this whole thing here where we laid it all out, and he just goes, gotta be Jordan. And he go, why? And he just goes, sick, innie. You wouldn't go, this is a great conversation. Get out, Thorin. I want to talk to this guy. Like, he's got nothing. He just said the joke there. This is one thing that you'll be able to appreciate as an elitist. It's like when people like the things I like The Wire or early Game of Thrones, but then I find out they like it for the wrong reasons. I look down on them. That's who I am. That's who I am. I look down on them, mate. I don't care that you said the same thing as me, mate. We're not getting the same thing out of it because at the end of the day, when I bail on Game of Thrones and you're still telling me like the Battle of the Bastards was the best episode ever recorded, it's like, you make me sick. I'm going to go talk to a guy who doesn't even think Game of Thrones is good, who thinks The Sopranos is good, you arsehole.
Something that's more relevant to like my sphere is just when people like the same clothing brands, but then they just buy the wrong items from the collections. You're like, why did you buy? Like, yes, we're wearing the same brand, but you're not even recognizing what makes this brand unique or anything like that. What their ethos is. You're just buying a logo T-shirt. Good for you.
Yes, absolutely. And also to me, another thing about if you're doing like historical stuff is I also do think as well that like because of the ring discussion, like there's two things, because this happens in all modern day esports, people will notice as well, right? Because it becomes just stands and nut huggers battling each other. Like if you notice, you'll see some of those accounts I retweet Maui Snake because they give like an interesting fact about Kobe or a clip or whatever. Oh, the rest of their tweets disgust me because the rest of their tweets are just why like the other player's a moron and cretin and isn't even good at basketball. It's like, bro, like I'll give you the best example. Right, the modern day example of where you don't have an eye test if you tell me this guy sucks is Carmelo Anthony. Right, look, he definitely had a bunch of playoffs where he was a bit of a choker. I do think that was the case. But secondly, most of his teams were far from loaded. The Nuggets teams he played on were mad scarce, mate. And then later, those Knicks teams, they're just badly managed teams, mate. None of these teams. Where's all his all-stars? Where's all his all-NBA teammates if he's such a bomb? Like, I agree, he did actually have some underwhelming playoffs. But if you want to talk like regular season, so most of your career, this guy's bag's fucking sick as well, mate. Again, physically, mad intimidating and imposing. What he can do for such a big guy is ridiculous. Like his fucking, all the jab steps and the fucking essentially another unstoppable player if he wants to be. If he has the right attitude. But because he has 0 rings, he never even got close to a ring. He had like that 1 year he could have won when Kobe beat you. That was the only chance he had at a ring. Because of that, dude, You wouldn't even be allowed a convo where he's like a great player in the modern. I think people even didn't want him on the all 75 team or something. I don't think they noticed as well. You do know this guy was putting up something for real, Maui. Like, I'm going to say 15 or 16 seasons of this. Like, before he became like the role player, he was just a beast. It's a bit like the one I always say in the 90s that was like, this was Karl Malone. Yeah, he didn't win a title, mate. This guy's another just bucket. This is a guy who, even though he plays power forward, has an amazing shooting touch. He has a billion counters, moves. Like, you can't stop him. Now, look, he might stop himself. Maybe he chokes in the game. Maybe he doesn't have a good game in the elimination game. That's also why, if you notice, Michael Jordan just wins as well. Like, he's also one of the most clutch players ever, isn't he? Like, that added to everything. Just it's the ultimate package. But some of these players get criminally underrated, and because of idiot fans, you don't even have the convo. You don't even talk about what they were good at.
Well, I think the main arguments against someone like Melo would be the same arguments you would use against someone like Allen Iverson, where it's just high volume shooters that maybe sacrifice on efficiency. It's not even maybe, they did sacrifice on efficiency because there was no shot that they didn't like. And so their field goal percentages were relatively low. Assist numbers for Carmelo throughout his career, he averaged, by the way, under 3 assists per game, and he's playing.
The joke is he didn't pass. He's called the black hole for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you could even. I think Kobe by like I'm pretty sure Kobe had better numbers.
As far as I know, this is not a joke. You know, that's one of the craziest myths in basketball history that Kobe didn't pass, because do you know there's some stat like I think he's second all time average assists for a non-point guard or something mental like that.
Well, he had Kobe.
It's like 6 or 7 basically is what he's at. I'm
looking at it right now. It's like for Kobe's regular season assists per game. And the first 2 seasons, he basically didn't pass, by the way. But after that, 4.7 assists per game for his total career. And his first season was 1.3. Second season, 2.5 assists per game. So barely ever passing. He developed that game later on. Carmelo, frankly, just never added it.
No,
if anything, I'm actually looking at it. If anything, he got worse over his career.
I'll give you an analogy. You'll like this. I would actually give the analogy. Oh, it's going to hurt so many feelings. But spoiler, soon Twitter's going to be monetized, mate. Now I'm going to be loving these takes. I'm going to be spitting them like a machine gun. You think Fallen's overrated? Wait till I find out which other of your heroes which other sacred oxes I'm going to gore, motherfuckers. Here's my take. Carmelo is like Nico. Because again, Nico's body of work's incredible. Does have some issues in big playoff games sometimes. And here's the key thing. The reason I gave the analogy also is this, Maui. I think people like Nico and Melo are ruined by the first teams they're in. Because when you're in a team where you can't trust anyone, then why would you pass? You know what I mean? Like, if you pass to him and he misses, and then you have like one less chance to get a bucket, but you lose the game, you're just like essentially even the way your mind works, like the reward circuits will tell you, don't do it. Even if there's 2 people and you shoot, like you're the one in the gym all day, mate. You're the one who can beat these guys. And the problem they have, because remember, Nico was on that mouse sports team that was so fucking whack. People forget this dude. There's a detail about that year in 2016 no one mentions. He was IGLing as well as doing that. He was IGLing as a young star, and he was one of the best fraggers in the whole world. And his teammates are people like Dennis and Spiddy. His best teammates were Nex, who was never clutch, and fucking Chris J. Chris J's his AWPer. Like, as a star. So if you have that team, like, yeah, you're going to never trust anyone fully. It's why the joke is, I even said this to him, it's like, mate, if you can't trust Carrigan, what IGL's going to walk through the door? Who do you think it's going to be? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to essentially lose trust in everyone. And I think people like Carmelo Anthony have that problem. What happens is when you build your whole game, when it has to only be you, well, the big problem is these are all team sports. Like I used to say to some of the players in the team sports who had this problem, you want to be like my mate Nanawa in StarCraft 2. It's a 1v1 game, mate. He can be as big a dickhead as he wants. He can believe in no one else. He can trust no one. But as long as his game's fire, it's 1v1. He can win. He can win the tournament. Like, it's great. In a team game, eventually there has to be a team component. And it isn't as simple as, like, you know, just pass to a bad player. It's more like when you do get a player that has some skills, then you got to learn to trust them, which I can see why that's, if you've done it for 5-6 years, it's going to take you a while to do that. Not everyone's going to, because I think that's the same thing with Nico. Sometimes I get the vibe that, like, he can always get his, mate. He's just too good. But do I think he really trusts the IGL's call when it's 14-14, it's elimination game at a major? I don't know if he does. You know what I mean? And I don't blame him. He's almost been conditioned like this, but it's sad. That's why the Melo example's sad. This guy easily could have had rings. If you don't think he could, I don't think you were watching, mate. This guy was a monster.
Yeah, I think with Melo's career, I think that one thing is that he also just never escaped the shadow of LeBron throughout its entirety, where he would always just kind of like, because they were drafted in the same year, if I'm not mistaken, and that was always, and kind of coming into the NBA. Obviously, LeBron had more publicity surrounding him, but I think that people thought Carmelo was the possibility. I guess like there was that. I don't think anyone really considered Darko as necessarily overtaking either of them, but in terms of those two in that season, coming out of that year, Carmelo just had such a less complete game, even though his offensive arsenal was much deeper. And so for LeBron, it also felt like he was looking towards how do you play the most complete game of basketball, whereas, like you're saying, because of Melo's lack of teammates, he just focused on himself even more and more and more, which made him actually a superstar in terms of fan appeal. Like I think people loved Melo, especially when he went to the Knicks. His stock as just as a superstar rose to such high levels because I'd say he was the last good player for the Knicks, and that's something I don't think there was before that. It was probably. What would you say, like
Patrick
Oakley?
Ewing or something?
Ewing? Yeah, okay, Ewing. I guess it would be Ewing, but more.
I mean, they had a really bad decade and a half before that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for him to even have a playoff run with the Knicks is probably where he gained a lot of fans in 2013, where they made it to like the second round. Yeah.
The problem is they lost to the Pacers in that one, where there's like a more complete team. Basically, they could have gone further that year though. They were a decent team. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.